Dr. Ahmed Shaban Abdel Gawad is an assessment and a training consultant, a TESOL trainer, Adult Education Center, Ain Shams University. He is Master's and PhD holder in Curriculum and TEFL Instruction, a Cambridge CELTA certified, a founder of a Step into TEFL online community, an expert in structuring, teaching, learning and assessment frameworks for school. The presentation title, Washback and Testing That Works. The main points of the research paper. Washback is the effect that testing has on teaching and learning. The past years have seen a growing awareness that testing and the standardized exams can have consequences beyond just the classroom. Tests and test results have a significant impact on the career life of individual test takers. Hence, the presentation will browse the effects of Washback on learners, teachers, and English language skills progress. In addition, it will provide solutions for better assessment that help learners master the target skills due to their levels. The presentation clarifies relationships between teaching and testing, characteristics of Washback, round map towards effective Washback. Dr. Ahmed, you are a co-host now. You can start sharing your presentation, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good morning, everybody, and so happy to be with you in such conference talking about standardized exams and assessment tools. And as you know that recently we have heard about a lot of terms related to standardized exams and testing, and also outcomes, rubric, standards. Okay, and as we have many different exams which are recognized all over the world, like Cambridge exam, Pearson, PTE, TOEFL, IELTS, and these exams are very important and essential to the learning, teaching learning process, but also we have something which is called washback and testing. So are we ready to go on board now to know what is our agenda? Our agenda is about washback or backwash, relationship between teaching and testing, impact, washback and consequences, characteristics of washback, components of washback. Also, we will talk about why do we test students and how to prepare our learners for tests. And also, there is a nutshell or a brief about teaching learning process. And finally, we will end with how to achieve effective washback. This is a practical model. At first, what do you think of this term when you hear it for the first time? Please, in the chat box, you can type the words or any idea you got when you listened and hear this word, washback or backwash. Yes, you can use the chat box to write any idea about washback or backwash or any word related to it when you hear it for the first time, I mean. Strong word, yes. Sorry, strange word, yes. Okay, let's see what is kind of brainstorming. Yes. Impact of testing. Yes, Mr. Sama, yes, impact of testing. And let's move directly to see definitions of Washback and the effect a test has on a classroom practice. Also, how assessment instruments affect educational practice and beliefs. So you have a testing system. So what are the effects of this testing system on your learning and teaching process, on learners and teachers as well? Okay, so Washback or Backwash, really both have the same meaning. Okay, nothing different from both terms, because some educators talked about washback, and others talked about backwash, the same meaning. So washback or backwash is the effects of testing system on learning and teaching process. So washback is real, and we have this idea in our schools, as sometimes it has frequently been noted that teachers will teach to a test. That is, if they know the content of a test and the format of a test, they will teach their students accordingly. So when they have the criteria and the steps and the items of the test, they will prepare and make some sort of orientation courses to their students to get ready for the exams. And as you know that in our schools, we have these questions all the time. Will this be in the exam, Mr. or Miss? These are questions from students to their teachers. So the washback effect in our schools is really there and is real. And what is the relation between teaching and testing? Okay, as you know that testing and teaching is part of the teaching, and also teaching leads to testing. So testing is part of a broader domain, which is assessment. Okay, and assessment is also part of another domain, which is teaching. So teaching is the umbrella name or the domain for testing, assessment, evaluation, and the other procedures we do in the learning teaching process. So testing is part of our teaching because you are teaching your students, and you should test them all the time or at the end. Sometimes you have to practice formative assessment or summative assessment. It depends on the system you follow in your school and education system. So there is a good relation between teaching and testing. Okay, they both need each other. So we have two competing goals. Okay, in a relationship between teaching and testing, we have two competing goals: immediate goal and long-term goal. For example, you need to achieve certain test scores because you need to test your students, and also you need test scores to be positive, to be better. On the long run, on the long-term goal, increase and develop language proficiency. So we, as English teachers, okay, we have to focus on both things, to prepare my students to use language authentically, and also to get high scores, to be able to join universities and help them in the workforce later. Washback, testing, teaching, and feedback. Let's see the difference between washback and feedback. What's the difference? The difference is clear. Washback, as we said, is the influence of testing on teaching and learning. So the extent to which a test influences language teachers and learners to do things they wouldn't necessarily or otherwise do that promote or inhibit language learning. Okay, so washback can be positive and negative, and we will talk about these points in the slides to come. Then the testing is a type of activities that allow you to see if the students have achieved the objectives, because you know that testing is part of other components. You have curriculum, teaching methods, learner, teacher, and also you have assessment. Testing is part of this assessment, and you need to achieve certain objectives and learning objectives to get outcomes, better outcomes. So the test is one of the procedures that can be used to assess students' performance. It has a specific objective to measure. Okay, so now teaching, as we said, that it is teaching is a broad domain of the learning and education system. Is the process of passing explained information on given subjects or disciplines that are worldwide accepted as valid and not contested. Also, it is the activity that helps students to achieve the objectives of the lesson, course, syllabus, or curriculum. And also, as you know, that we are teaching skills to students. Also, and recently, some sort of content added to some curricula to help the students to use language in different contexts and new authentic context. The next one is feedback, is an essential part of effective learning. It helps students understand the subject being studied and gives them clear guidance on how to improve their learning, because this feedback is indicator for you as a teacher to provide, to support positive attitudes, and also to make some remedial and some to work on some points that students couldn't understand. The ultimate goal of feedback is to provide students with an I can do this attitude. Students can say, I can do this, I can read, I can speak, I can use language in certain situations, I can make suggestions. So the feedback is essential part in, and you should be informed that feedback is part of the teaching process. Okay, it is not just a procedure you do. Okay, it is essential part in the teaching process. So let's see that we have different type of effects of testing. Okay, testing maybe it can be local inside your school, and it can be international and related to global objectives. So let's know the difference between impact and washback. Test impact, the effects of tests on macro levels. So macro levels is related to maybe to education system, related to the society, to the global issues, okay, of education and society. Washback is the effects of language tests on micro levels, okay, of language teaching and learning. That's to say, inside the classroom. So what are the effects of the tests you employed in your class? You can get results and know what are the points to work on with your students. A view of test. So the idea of test influence falling between the narrow one of washback. So because in washback there is a narrow domain here, and the all-encompassing one of impact. Let's see this chart or this picture to know what's the difference between washback and impact. As you see that washback is part of impact. So washback related to micro and local issues, local procedures related to the learner and the teacher, so inside the classroom. But impact of testing, like impacts of testing like IELTS, like Cambridge exams, international exams, okay, like TOEFL. These exams are employed all over the world. So the stats which we get from these exams can help us on the international phase, okay, macro, social, national, and international. This is for impact. And so classroom interactions such as instruction, curriculum planning, and materials design, we have been referred to as washback, okay? But, or whereas, the influence of tests on communities and societies in the form of policies has been called impact. Like, as Dr. Shaheen has talked about, some exams related to science and math, okay? These are employed internationally, so their impact is very important to be taken into consideration when we planning our curricula. And also its impact is related to the teaching methods we follow in our schools by teachers. Let's move to the next point, which is characteristics of washback. The characteristics of washback is stretching from harmful at one end through neutral to beneficial at the other end. Harmful here means negative, and beneficial means positive. So the characteristic starts from, we have negative, neutral, positive. So let's talk about these. Washback can be positive or negative, and we will talk about these points in details. Narrow or broad, because when you are limited to the testing process, so you are narrowing the curriculum, or maybe if you are after testing and language proficiency, so you are broadening the curricula. Unintended washback or intended, sometimes you do this, the effect of testing is intended by you as a teacher or by your school, or unintended. It can have a short or long period of influence. This is a very important point for washback. Testing procedures can have both negative and positive effects on program and curriculum design and implementation. As we said that your testing, when you follow certain tests, whether these tests are standardized or internationally recognized, so it can have both negative or positive effects on your program you are performing to your students, and the curriculum and implementation and teaching methodology and different points. Let's see that washback is negative. How can washback is negative? Restriction of content. So you are narrowing of curriculum. You are only teaching the parts, okay, that are required in the test. Here you are not after about the learning process and teaching learning process and the curricula as a whole. You are only teaching for exams. So restriction of content, too much time practicing for the test. You have a lot of time to practice, to help students to make practice for the test. And after that, when they have tests and they get high scores, okay, they get high scores, but the learning objectives haven't been achieved. Positive, transparent objectives and outcomes. So when you are teaching for exams or teaching to get a strong washback about testing process, so you have transparent objectives and outcomes, okay? As you know that when you read about Cambridge exams like KIT, PET, FCE, whatever, okay, so these exams are related to certain criteria, starting from A1, A2, B1, B2. So each level of this is related to CFR levels. CFR, can do statements. So here you have certain objectives and outcomes you should achieve. Increase the motivation of learners, because students, when they get high scores, they are highly motivated to learn and practice English. Increase the accountability of teachers. How? Because when you have certain scores after testing process, so when you make stats and statistical analysis for these results, so you have clear idea, clear image about your learners. What are this? You have 4 skills, okay? You have listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So after you have the results, so you know where is the problem, where is the shortcomings of your students, so you can work on the negative points. Also, the negative points of washback: ignoring subjects and activities that did not contribute directly to pass the exam. So only these topics are required for the exam. For example, the present simple and past simple are required for this exam. So some teachers may ignore other tenses or other rules. Teaching to the test leads to adopted more of a memorization approach, which reduced emphasis on critical thinking. So memorization here, so you practice a lot of tasks to prepare your learners to exams, so they can memorize the similar sentences they had before. So you are teaching to the test. And this point will can reduce emphasis on critical thinking, which is based on real learning process. Okay, because students are active to talk, to use language in different situations, in different contexts, to get ready to use language authentically in everyday life and all their future plans. Students were practicing exam techniques rather than language learning activities. Okay, students may not be able to learn real life knowledge because you are only teaching to get high scores, to pass exams. So you don't concentrate on communication skills, for example, to help students use language. So the ultimate goal of teaching any language to use language authentically in real life situations, in everyday situations, but instead learn discrete points of knowledge. They only learn discrete points of knowledge that are tested. What are also, we have positive washback, so we should look positively at washback. So when tests become as teaching learning activities, they open doors for changes in methodologies and syllabus. Okay, so the positive effect on the methodologies we have and the syllabus design. Focusing on the washback helps to find solutions for the negative side. Okay. Also, tests induce teachers to cover their subjects and complete their syllabi within the prescribed time limits. So you have a certain exam at the end of the term. So you are teaching students to pass this exam or this test. So you have time allotment to be fulfilled. Okay, and you should end your syllabus at certain time. So this type of washback and testing really help teachers to commit to this distribution of syllabus. Tests motivate students to work harder, to have a sense of accomplishment, and thus enhance learning. So tests can motivate students and can change their attitude towards learning language. And as you know that we are teaching English as a foreign language, and students don't use it really in their daily life. So when you motivate them to learn this language, this is a positive point. What are the components of washback? This is very important point to be discussed. We have something which is called the 3 Ps. 3 Ps here are participants. Participants of the washback are students, teachers, administrators, materials, developers, researchers, selecting officials. Okay, these are the participants. All people are involved in the learning teaching process are participants of the washback processes. Using, studying, speaking the language, worrying, memorizing, cheating, maybe de-emphasizing or emphasizing, pacing, tailoring, tutoring. These processes are also the second component of washback, which is the processing stage. The third P, which is products. So after that, we have the products we use: course content, methodology, curricula, materials, learning, teaching. These are the products. And I think this diagram or this model of Bailey, which designed 1996, can show you the flow and the procedures of testing process. Let's start from the left here. Tests. We have tests. Okay, the participants in tests are students, teachers, also the material writers and curriculum designers, and we have also researchers. These participants, okay, have a lot of processes to be employed and involved to get products. These products for students, for example, learning, they learn the language. For teaching, okay, the role of the material writers and the curriculum designers, new materials. So we have new materials and new curricula that fit the testing process. Also, researchers, what is the role of researchers here is to discuss and make analysis for the stats and the results of the tests. Why? To set their plans and give recommendations to the teachers and all people involved in the learning teaching process to give them the positive effects and the bad effects or the negative effects to help changing and developing the education system itself. Why do we test students? Generally speaking, as teachers, you know that we have different objectives to test students. And especially in English or any language, definitely, sometimes we evaluate prior learning. So we have diagnostic tests. So sometimes we do that at the beginning of a session, beginning of a term, beginning of a year, school year. So we have diagnostic tests to test prior knowledge or prior skills of the learners. Providing feedbacks, and this is, we can say this is a type of assessment for learning, as you know, that we get feedback from students about their performance while we are teaching them. Providing reinforcement, also this is a type of formative assessment. So we reinforce and foster some attitudes, some behaviors, some points for students and our learners. Assigning grades. When you are assigning grades, so sometimes you test the students to assign grades for them, to give them their grades at the end of a term, at the end of the month, at the end of the year. And this is the summative assessment or assessment of learning. Certifying competence. This is also a summative assessment that is used to give students certificates. You taught them some certain components, certain subject, certain skills, okay? So you check their competence, and as you know that competence involve three things. Competence involve skills, knowledge, and attitude. How can tests help learners and teachers? Okay, let's see that for learners, assessments reflect the concepts and skills that the teacher emphasized in class. Okay, providing important feedback on their learning progress. This is for learners. Also helping them identify learning problems. Okay, so tests are very important for learners, and some schools use some standardized exams to check and assess their learners using neutral or globally recognized exams like Cambridge, like TOEFL. Okay, so students can get the feedback or positive feedback about their learning progress. However, when we are talking about teachers, so the tests can help teachers, helping them identify what they taught well and what they need to work on. That's to say, missed test items specify what is required in the teaching process, post-testing. The post-testing stage is very important for teachers. They can change their teaching methodology, can change their they can change the worksheets they use, the practice techniques they employ, the teaching tools like they can use iTools to help them change their students' performance and their skills. Okay. And now let's see the purpose of assessment and evaluation, because sometimes we have some confusion between assessment and evaluation. When you assess your students, this is to increase quality. You are trying to help them be better in their learning teaching process. But when you evaluate is to judge quality. You are judging, now this person in the picture is trying to water the plant, but here he is looking at it and saying it's too short, and not enough leaves. So he is trying to judge. Okay, so evaluation is broader than assessment term. Okay, so when you are assess your students, you're trying to increase quality and get better skills and better performance. Importance of alignment. And this is we can say this is the essential point here, how to make alignment between testing and teaching. When learning and testing are not aligned, bad things happen. Possible reactions to lack of alignment. When you have lack of alignment, so learners who have mastered the content fail the test. Learners become frustrated and lose motivation. Teachers change their instruction to prepare learners for the test, not the learning outcomes. So there is no alignment between learning and testing. So as you see in this picture, they try to make alignment to this to this pipe. Okay, so alignment is really important. You should teach to prepare your students to exams. That's okay, but you should also achieve the learning objectives, okay, and teach language, teach the 4 skills, practice critical thinking, practice creativity, practice communication, collaboration, okay? Preparing learners for the test. There are 2 types of preparation. The first type is designed to familiarize learners with the item types on the test. Okay, you are teaching a certain course for different grades, and you have a certain content, a certain scope and sequence of the course, and you also at the same time teaching them the item types of the test, the kinds of instruction that will encounter and give them practice in working within the time limitation. This type of preparation reduces the chance that scores will be affected by their unfamiliarity with any aspect of the test. The second type, which I think it is not required.
Sorry for interrupting, Dr. Ahmed, but we have 5 minutes left, okay?
5 minutes. I started at 10 and okay, no problem. The second type is designed to increase the score of the test taker by instilling test-taking techniques that focus upon the test items, rather than improving the learner's ability to the construct or on the constructs in question. So, for example, spending time looking at the options, multiple choice items, to discover how frequently the longest option is likely to be the correct response. And this type is not good to and not positive to provide learning or real learning teaching, and distracts learner from the real. Let's see this diagram. We start teaching and learning, so we have objectives. These objectives are tested using feedback and assessment. Also, we have the testing, which is the formal testing process, okay? Also, we have the washback after we have testing, so we should discuss the effects of testing, and this washback may be negative or positive, and this these effects, or whether they are negative or positive, are related to the processes or participants and the products and tools, okay? And this one is the effects are washback effects. These are micro effects related to the classroom and school, but this also can have impact or macro effect, which is related to maybe the education system or the country itself. A roadmap towards effective washback. So we have to set goals and objectives for English language. So spreading and familiarizing the culture of standards in exams. Also adapted, you can assign adapted CFR or IFR can-do statements or criteria for each grade from 1 to 12 due to levels, general objectives, and proficiency required for each stage. Appropriate graded coursebook that achieve the IFR. So you should select the coursebook that achieve the learning objectives you assign. And you can check the CFR and global scale of English for Pearson. They can provide you with different learning objectives for each skill and each system of language. The action plan, so assessment process for learning and as learning, you should follow these items. Employing a standardized skill-based exam by providing mock testing, like using mock exams of Cambridge according to the level you provide for young learners, whatever. Practice and integration, the types of and the items of the test in your daily teaching learning process. Final tests to be employed summative assessment, which are criterion reference tests based on criteria and certain objectives. Also, you can measuring the Washback using the statistical analysis for each skill, strengths, and weaknesses due to learning and teaching factors for teacher, learner, methodology, curriculum, integration process. Systematic feedback, some of the points of improvement and others to work on. So you can make use of the feedback and the results you get from the testing process. Criterion-based remedial programs, so you have some problems in the performance of students in some skills, so you should employ remedial program based on criteria, based on can-do statements, okay? So these are the suggested actual steps of teaching for learning and for better exam results, employing integration. And I think this is the end of the session of the presentation, and now waiting for your questions if you have any.